Meet Baek Yuseol. After a decade of playing the hardest game in the world, he just got transmigrated into the body of the game's ultimate trash character. He's 17 and stuck with a body that can't hold mana except for one high-tier spell he's already mastered through sheer muscle memory, Blink. In the middle of a high-stakes duel at Stella Academy, he moves with a level of precision that shouldn't be possible for a student. His opponent, a seasoned mage, is completely stunned, unable to land a single hit on a kid he thought was a nobody. The crowd watches in disbelief as a supposedly weak student swats away the teacher's strongest spell like it's nothing. Baek doesn't even break a sweat, looking completely focused as he treats reality like a high-stakes game. They reset, the air between them thick with the kind of tension you only see in a boss fight. The instructor grits his teeth, his pride absolutely shattered in front of the entire class. He funnels every drop of his remaining mana into his staff, the green energy crackling and threatening to erupt. Up in the stands, a senior faculty member watches with a smirk, clearly enjoying the massive upset. With a roar of pure frustration, the mage lunges forward for one final all-or-nothing strike. Baek's focus narrows down to the single frame he needs to make his winning move. The students in the stands are already writing the teacher off, saying he has no business teaching if he can't beat a commoner. The final clash is over in a blur of movement that most of the audience can't even follow. When the dust settles, Baek has his blade right at the man's throat, ending the duel in a landslide victory. The defeated instructor can only stare up in total shock, realizing he just got schooled by the school's worst student. Meanwhile, in a different part of this world, a young boy named Jeremy Scalved wears a chillingly satisfied smirk. Watching him is Aiselle Wolf, a girl with long blue hair who's destined for a life of tragedy if things don't change. On the ground behind Jeremy lies a bloodied body, a grim reminder of how he climbed the ladder of power. He looks down with a cold, detached gaze, as if human life is just another resource to be used. Jeremy walks away from the carnage, leaving Aiselle to follow silently in his wake. He nonchalantly wipes the blood from his hands, cleaning his weapon like it's just another routine chore. He's exactly where he wants to be, a small, dark smile playing on his lips as he moves on to his next goal. This is the Crown Prince who secured his throne at just 12 years old, by ruthlessly defeating his own brothers. But back at Stella Academy, things are a lot less bloody, mostly just stressful alchemy classes. The labs are bustling with students trying to brew potions that won't blow up in their faces. Baek is right in the middle of it, blending in with the other students despite his legendary performance in the duel. One of the girls nearby, another student with a bow in her hair, is clearly reaching her breaking point with her mixture. Professor Maisen Tiran, a strict alchemist, is busy tearing into another student who can't seem to get the mixture right. The professor holds up a vial of perfect red potion, showing the class exactly what they're failing to achieve. The benches are lined with failed experiments, a testament to how difficult high-level alchemy really is. The girl with the bow tries her best to stay focused, carefully measuring out each ingredient with trembling hands. She concentrates on her cauldron, hoping this is the one that finally turns out right so she can avoid the professor's wrath. Maisen doesn't hold back, continuing to lecture the poor student for her incompetence. Realizing she's run out of materials, the frustrated girl decides she needs to scavenge for some more ingredients. She scans the room, hoping to find someone with extra supplies or a clean vial she can borrow. That's when she spots Baek across the lab, looking like a total mad scientist while he works. He's hunched over his bench with an intense, almost creepy grin, clearly having way too much fun. On his desk sit two perfectly brewed red potions, finished way ahead of everyone else in the class. The girl quickly looks away, deciding that maybe she's better off struggling on her own than asking him for help. She turns her head and notices another student working quietly in the corner of the lab. It's Aiselle, working diligently on her own experiment and completely ignoring the chaos around her. Flame watches Aiselle work, feeling the pressure of being in the same room as a true genius. Aiselle is completely in the zone, her talent for alchemy clear as day as a massive magic circle flares up behind her. Flame can't help but feel a bit discouraged, seeing such a massive gap in their natural skill levels. Baek, on the other hand, is just watching with his usual calm and calculating gaze. He steps up to Flame, probably noticing her struggle and wanting to offer some much-needed advice. But Professor Maisen Tiran is already at her limit, looking like she's about to blow a fuse at any second. Flame looks over, clearly sensing the professor's growing irritation and wishing she could disappear. Maisen starts laying into Aiselle, finding any tiny flaw she can to publicly criticize the girl. Aiselle just takes the verbal abuse, her expression blank as she listens to the professor's harsh, unfair words. Baek watches the exchange, his eyes narrowed behind his glasses as he evaluates the situation. Flame is practically sweating from the tension, just hoping she isn't next in line for a lecture. The professor's shouting echoes through the lab, making every other student keep their head down and stay quiet. Baek finally speaks up, surprising everyone with his sudden and blunt interruption. He casually mentions that he's an orphan, dropping the no parents card right in the middle of the lecture. Maisen is completely caught off guard, her face flushing as she realizes she just stepped into a very awkward conversation. The rest of the class watches in stunned silence, unable to believe someone actually stood up to the professor like that. She tries to recover her composure, but the damage is done. The mood in the room has completely shifted. Baek just stares back at her, but as he looks through his bulbul glasses, he sees something far more dangerous than just a bad attitude. A system window pops up. It reveals that Maizen's dark demon erosion is already at 21%. It turns out she's a boss character fueled by inferiority and jealousy, already confirmed to be undergoing demonization. The professor's frustration isn't just normal anger. There's a literal demonic influence brewing beneath the surface. She's a dark demon contractor who chose to give up her humanity of her own free will. Once that erosion hits 90%, she'll be fully demonic. Knowing she's a future boss changes everything for Baek. He's not just dealing with a mean teacher, he's dealing with a monster. The two face off, the air between them colder than ever, as they both know there's no turning back now. Maizen eventually settles down and the class continues, but the students can't stop whispering about the confrontation. Baek stands firm, his knowledge of the game giving him the upper hand even against a powerful contractor. After class, Baek rubs his eyes, already exhausted by the drama, while Aiselle watches Jeremy walk away. Some of the other students seem to be having a rough time too, looking pretty miserable after the professor's outburst. One guy is even covering his face in shame, probably having failed his latest brew thanks to all the tension. Aiselle turns back to Baek, her eyes full of questions about how he handles everything so calmly. She looks out at the academy, the weight of her family's fallen name never far from her mind even in class. Baek offers a small, reassuring smile, trying to lift her spirits a little after such a rough day. They share a brief, lighthearted moment, a rare breath of fresh air in the middle of all the academy stress. They find a quiet corner of the lab to continue their work, away from the prying eyes of the other students. Baek starts explaining a new alchemy technique, his game knowledge giving him insights that no teacher could ever provide. Aiselle listens intently, her respect for his mysterious abilities and kindness growing by the second. Later that evening, Maizen stands alone, her shadow stretching long against the cold stone floor of the academy. She holds a mysterious note in her hand, a wicked smirk crossing her face as she plots her next move. Her eyes flash with a sinister light. She's clearly planning something that involves a lot more than just alchemy. The shadow of a secret organization looms over the school, threatening to block anyone who gets in their way. And at the top of her hit list is Baek Yuseol, the student who keeps defying her and her master's expectations. But our protagonist isn't the only one preparing for the coming storm. Aiselle is out on the training field, honing her own skills for the fights ahead. Flame looks back over her shoulder, her mind swirling with questions after her encounter with Baek Yuseol. Ma Yusong approaches her and hands over a small slip of paper. His expression polite but brief. Flame takes the note, her eyes drifting back to Baek's retreating figure as he walks away without a word. She stands alone in the middle of the grounds, the mysterious paper clutched tightly in her gloved hand. The handwriting on the note is frantic and barely legible, as if it were written in a moment of great haste or desperation. She stares at the cryptic message, trying to make sense of the strange events that seem to follow the mysterious transfer student. If Baek really does have knowledge of the original novel's plot, then he might be the only one truly prepared for the chaos to come. Flame's brow furrows as she senses a darkness looming over the academy, one that only Baek seems to understand. She grips the paper even tighter, the weight of the secrets she's uncovering beginning to feel like a heavy burden. Meanwhile, Baek maintains his cool exterior, but his eyes reveal a mind that is constantly calculating and planning. He runs a hand through his hair, the stress of his hidden knowledge briefly flickering across his face. He eventually reaches a reception desk, where a staff member greets him with a warm, professional smile. They exchange a few brief words, Baek keeping his responses short and to the point. "Thank you," he says with a polite nod, before turning to continue his solitary walk through the academy grounds. He moves with a clear sense of purpose, his mind already miles ahead of the current conversation. The Stella Academy towers over everything, a grand institution that hides as many secrets as it teaches lessons. Baek heads out into the surrounding forest, where the air is thick with the scent of wild magic and hidden dangers. Suddenly, a massive fire beast lunges from the foliage, a creature with power and stamina far beyond that of any normal beast. Baek doesn't flinch, his eyes narrowing as he evaluates the monster's threat level in an instant. The creature is enormous, its scales glowing with a dull, subterranean heat as it blocks his path. He reaches for a small, specialized tool, the blue glow of mana beginning to hum around the blade. The beast's red eye fixes on him, a primal hunger driving it to attack the intruder in its territory. Baek stands perfectly still, waiting for the exact moment to strike with his unique ability. With a burst of speed, he dashes forward, his blade leaving a trail of blue light as it cuts through the air. He drives the weapon into the creature's neck, the mana-infused strike bypassing its thick, armored scales. The fire beast lets out a final, agonizing roar as the life begins to drain from its massive body. Baek remains focused, his expression unchanging even as he brings down a creature many times his size. The monster collapses into the dirt, its fiery breath fading away into a harmless cloud of smoke. He stands over his fallen foe, the silence of the forest returning as the battle comes to an end. But the peace is short-lived. More eyes are watching him from the shadows of the trees. A whole pack of the fire beasts begins to emerge, their glowing eyes a sea of red in the dim light. A confident smirk plays on Baek's lips. This is exactly the kind of challenge he needs to level up his skills. He doesn't hesitate for a second, throwing himself back into the fray with even greater intensity. Back at the academy, Aiselle looks up, her keen senses detecting the distant echoes of a struggle. She catches a glimpse of a tattered red cloak, a mysterious sign that only raises more questions. The other students are gathered in the hall, their minds occupied by their own studies and petty dramas. Aiselle thinks of Baek, a slight blush creeping onto her face as she recalls their brief interactions. He has already started making a name for himself, standing alongside the Crown Prince Jeremy and other top students. But the shadows are growing longer as Professor Maizen and her hooded subordinates watch from the sideline. The professor's smirk is cold and knowing, suggesting that she has plans for Baek that go far beyond any curriculum. Aiselle finds Baek later and tries to start a conversation, her nerves clearly getting the better of her. And as she watches them, Maizen's smile only grows sharper, a predator waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. The lecture hall is silent as the students of Stella Academy look on, their attention divided between the lesson and the unusual presence of Baek Yuseol. Baek remains a figure of quiet intensity, his presence felt even when he is just a face in the crowd. Aiselle Wolf watches him from her seat, her expression unreadable as she contemplates the strange boy who has suddenly entered her world. She looks down, her hand instinctively going to her chest as she tries to steady her racing heart. At the front of the room, Professor Maizen stands with her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the students with a mixture of boredom and hidden calculation. A cold, predatory smile touches the professor's lips, a sign that she is already planning her next move. "What?" one of the students whispers, the tension in the room reaching a breaking point as an unexpected interruption occurs. Baek Yuseol stands up, his hand raised as he prepares to speak, catching everyone by surprise. Professor Maizen narrows her eyes, her gaze fixing on Baek with a newfound interest. Baek meets her gaze with a small, knowing smile, seemingly unfazed by the professor's intimidating aura. In the center of the room, a magical flask begins to glow with a brilliant, pulsing red light, its energy filling the air. Maizen watches the display with a sharp, analytical eye, her mind already dissecting the magical process. The other students, including Jeremy and Ma Yusong, look on in awe and confusion as the experiment unfolds. Baek's expression remains bright and optimistic, his confidence acting as a beacon in the tense atmosphere. Aiselle and her classmates exchange uncertain glances, unsure of what to make of this sudden display of power. Jeremy and the others start to relax, a sense of wonder replacing their initial shock. Baek Yuseol's golden eyes shine behind his glasses, a reflection of the extraordinary power and knowledge he has brought with him to Stella Academy. Baek Yuseol is a pro gamer who just spent 10 years reaching the end of Aether World. He clicks the mouse, finally achieving the true ending that 90% of the players never see. Suddenly, he's transmigrated into the game world. Now he's a student at Stella Academy, explaining a complex puzzle to his peers. He taps a small black fragment on the table, the final piece of the logic puzzle. Baek points out how the fragment reacts to the other items they gathered. Several vibrant red feathers are laid out clearly on the table for everyone to see. Aiselle Wolf watches him with wide eyes, amazed by his deduction. She examines a test tube filled with golden liquid, carefully following his instruction. Baek watches her with a calm, knowing smile. Their teacher looks on, clearly skeptical of their unconventional approach. Baek gestures to their final product, confident in the result. A group of students in red robes move past them as they prepare for the reveal. The teacher's eyes sharpen as she takes a closer look at what they've created. Baek places the final reagent into the mix, completing the experiment. The whole group lights up when the solution actually works. One of the hooded students holds the vial while the teacher watches suspiciously. Her eyes go wide with shock as the substance begins to glow. She can't help but yell out when she realizes they've made something impossible. The liquid in the bottle pulses with a deep, magical blue light. She stares at the bottle in her hand, her expression frozen in disbelief. She looks up at the students, her skepticism turning into genuine amazement. Baek stands with his group, his expression completely composed. His friends are all smiles, relieved that the high-stakes exam is over. He starts to head out, leaving Aiselle deeply impressed by his hidden talent. Later, a massive magic explosion clears the area during a training session. A student stretches out after finishing her magic routine. Nearby, Hong Bi-yeon is in tears, surrounded by her concerned friends. She looks away, biting her lip in frustration over her performance. Her friends guide her away, trying to lift her spirits. Aiselle stands with the teacher as a massive magic circle flares up behind them. Flame watches Baek from a distance, wondering if he's a regressor like her. She recalls a vision of a figure standing before a great, dying sun. Magic seals and hourglasses spin in her mind as she analyzes the situation. She snaps out of it when she realizes she's being watched. Ma Yusong stands there, his hands in his pockets, looking unbothered. He walks over to her, his gait slow and deliberate. He stops to say something that catches her off guard. Flame looks at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. She tries to act natural, though his intensity is hard to ignore. Ma Yusong looks back at her with a heavy, intense gaze. They stand together in the courtyard of the Grand Academy. He raises a hand in a casual wave and walks off. Baek Yuseol stands alone in a sunlit courtyard, contemplating his new reality. The next day, the sun rises over the imposing stone walls of Stella Academy. Baek spends his morning at a busy cafe, trying to blend in with the other students. He looks out the window, his expression unreadable as he thinks about his next move. He's interrupted by a girl named Jackie, a close friend of Flame's. Baek leans his head on his hand, looking completely exhausted by the interaction already. He looks up, startled by the intensity in Jackie's voice. She stands over him with her arms crossed, clearly looking for an explanation. Baek looks at her with a mix of confusion and slight annoyance. Jackie stares him down, her reddish-pink hair catching the light as she waits for him to speak. He rubs his temples, the stress of dealing with these persistent characters starting to show. She continues to lecture him, her face filled with righteous indignation. Baek just watches her, waiting for the storm to pass. Jackie declares that it's her turn to take him on, her eyes burning with determination. She looks him over one last time, her arms still crossed as she makes her point. Baek tries to offer a friendly smile, but his nervous sweat gives him away. Jackie finally loses her cool, shouting at him with everything she's got. She turns and storms off into the sunlight, leaving him behind. A moment later, she stops and covers her face, unable to hold back her tears. Suddenly, Ma Yusong, the academy's top-ranked student, marches toward Baek. He demands to know why Flame went back crying, his voice full of anger. Baek freezes, realizing he's being glared at by the strongest person in the school. He holds up his hands and offers a nervous, apologetic grin. Ma Yusong looms over him, his presence alone enough to make anyone back down. He looks at Baek with a chilling, arrogant smirk. Meanwhile, Aiselle Wolf sits in silence, her mind weighed down by her own troubles. She walks past Baek in the hallways, her expression cold and distant as she ignores him. She bites her lip, looking like she's on the verge of a breakdown. In her mind, she sees herself surrounded by glowing documents and ancient runes. She lets out a pained sigh, the pressure of her situation finally getting to her. Her fist tightens on her book as she tries to regain control. A vision of two white-haired figures surrounded by a fiery red aura flashes through her mind. She clutches her head, the intense visions becoming overwhelming. She looks up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and sudden realization. Late at night, the academy is quiet, save for a single lit window in the dorms. Inside, Flame is fast asleep, finally getting some rest after a long day. She suddenly wakes up, her heart racing as if she just came out of a nightmare. She remembers a vision of standing in a sun-drenched field with Baek. In her dream, a figure in a tattered red cape walks toward a brilliant sunset. It's a wounded man with a defiant smile, asking if she truly wants to repeat the past. He looks back, blood on his face, and tells her that he's accepted his fate. A girl's voice cries out for him to wait, but he begins to vanish into the fading light. Aiselle Wolf screams in despair, reaching out for the man who is fading away into the light. The man in the red cape continues to walk toward the blinding brilliance, never looking back. Baek Yuseol's hand clenches his bedsheets as he wakes up from the intense dream, gasping for air. In her own room, Flame looks down at her hands, sweating as she processes the same vision. She remembers the sight of Baek Yuseol in her dream, surrounded by a whirlwind of mana and light. Baek sits on the edge of his bed, his eyes filled with a heavy seriousness as he thinks about the vision. His grip tightens on the white sheets, the memories of the dream still vivid and unsettling. Flame sits up in bed, her eyes wide with shock as she tries to make sense of what she saw. Suddenly, Jackie appears at her bedside, her face pale and full of concern for her friend. Flame quickly pulls the covers up to her face, startled by Jackie's sudden and silent appearance. Jackie stares at her with a worried expression, clearly sensing the distress Flame is in. Dawn breaks over the majestic stone towers and arched windows of Stella Academy. Ma Yuseong stands in the courtyard, his arms crossed over his high-collared uniform as he waits. Jackie, now wearing a long brown cloak, runs toward him with a look of urgency on her face. She stops in front of him, her breath hitching as she looks up at the top-ranked student. Ma Yusong looks down at her with a calm, stoic expression, his purple hair catching the morning light. Jackie stands with her head bowed, looking small and vulnerable in front of him. She looks up with her blue eyes, reflecting a mix of determination and lingering uncertainty. Later, Flame is seen smiling and laughing with others, seemingly back to her usual self. Jackie stands nearby in the hallway, watching Flame with a sad and wistful expression. Ma Yusong smirks confidently, as if he's satisfied with the way things are playing out. Jackie stands alone on the stone-paved courtyard, her shadow long as she contemplates her choices. A clenched fist shows the internal struggle she's facing, her emotions threatening to boil over. The scene shifts to the imposing first main tower of the academy, its stone walls reaching for the sky. Inside, a middle-aged man with a mustache sighs and admits that he's ashamed. He looks back over his shoulder, his expression full of regret as he speaks to a colleague. A woman with short gray hair and round glasses offers a kind and reassuring smile. The man places a hand on her shoulder, a small smile appearing as they share a moment of understanding. He walks through the grand library, passing by massive bookshelves filled with ancient knowledge. The woman with glasses looks down, a soft and satisfied smile on her face as she watches him go. A close-up of the man shows him chuckling softly to himself, his earlier shame seemingly lifted. He stands tall in the center of the library, surrounded by the Academy's vast collection of books. Nearby, a young student with blonde hair and glasses struggles with a massive stack of papers. Baek Yuseol steps in and offers to help, surprising her as he steadies the heavy stack. They walk together through the library aisles, the girl looking up at him with a wide, happy smile. Baek looks at her with a curious expression, wondering why she's working so hard on her own. A corner of the library is a mess of crumpled papers and open books, the site of her research. The girl, wearing a white lab coat, smiles brightly at Baek as they reach her cluttered desk. She looks a bit flustered, her hands fluttering as she tries to tidy up her workspace. Baek stands by and talks to her, his calm presence a sharp contrast to her frantic energy. She looks at him with a soft, grateful smile, her eyes sparkling with appreciation behind her glasses. She hands him a small brown paper bag with a shy blush, apologizing for not having any coffee to give him. Baek Yuseol offers a warm, encouraging smile to the blonde student in the lab coat, grateful for her assistance in the library. She notes down his findings with focused intensity as he looks on, his gaze calm and steady. After their brief interaction, Baek turns to walk away, his expression shifting to one of quiet, contemplative seriousness. In the hallway, Baek stands with his arms crossed, facing a girl with long brown hair and white bows, Flame, who seems to have been waiting for him. Flame looks utterly exhausted and slightly annoyed, while Baek makes a comical face, surprised by her intense and unexpected reaction. She crosses her arms and sighs deeply, explaining something to him, while he listens intently to her concerns and frustration. The scene shifts to the eerie stillness of Martevis Cemetery at night, where tall tombstones and obelisks cast long, dark shadows. A terrifying vision of necromancers and skeletal warriors rises from a swirl of purple magical mist, hinting at dark forces at play. Later, Baek visits an office to submit a formal document to a stern-looking Academy official with a prominent scar on his face. The official carefully reviews the paperwork at his desk, while Baek stands silently, waiting for his response with a professional air. Baek's mind is a whirlwind of thoughts as he considers the path ahead, his own reflections intertwined with the weight of the future. A text box announces a new location. A few days later, Martevis Cemetery, where the air is thick with tension and mystery. A student with brown hair and a bandage on his cheek faces off against a grotesque, purple monster with a long, lashing tongue. He grins with a wild and confident energy, his eyes filled with a fierce determination as he prepares to strike the beast. With the monster defeated, the young man stands victoriously in the dark cemetery, his resolve clear and unshakable. He is soon joined by his teammate, a second-year student named Kasif Derek, who adjusts his glasses with a cool and serious air. The two young men stand together, prepared to face whatever other dangers might be lurking in the shadows of the cemetery. Nearby, a girl with gray hair and a red bow watches their progress, accompanied by the blue-haired Aiselle Wolf. They group up to discuss their strategy, the atmosphere tense as they navigate the haunted grounds together. Kasif Derek leads the way, followed closely by his teammates as they delve deeper into the mystery of the ancient graveyard. The girl with the red bow looks around cautiously, her eyes reflecting the strange magical glow that permeates the area. The four students stand together, a small beacon of resolve against the encroaching darkness and the unknown threats ahead. They move forward as a unit, their footsteps echoing softly on the damp ground of Martevis Cemetery. In the distance, they spot several ominous silhouettes standing near the ancient ruins, and they prepare for an inevitable confrontation. A discarded purple cloak lies on the damp grass, marking where someone was recently defeated. Aiselle Wolf stands in the thickening fog, her blue hair a sharp contrast to the gray cemetery around her. Hong Bi-yeon watches the horizon with her piercing red eyes, sensed something shifting in the air. Aiselle looks down, the weight of the mission clearly bothering her as they venture deeper into the fog. One of the boys laughs off the tension, but a brown-haired student snaps at him to shut up and keep focus. Suddenly, the earth groans and cracks spread across the stone tiles beneath their feet. Hong Bi-yeon and her teammate freeze as the tremble intensifies into a full-blown earthquake. Dark energy seeps from the ground, corrupting everything it touches. A skeletal hand thrusts upward from the dirt, clawing at the empty air. Aiselle and the others draw back, realizing they've walked straight into a trap. The brown-haired girl shouts a warning as dozens of glowing eyes appear in the mist. An army of robed skeletons rises, surrounding the students from all sides. In a different part of the cemetery, a lone student stands over a fallen cultist. Baek Yuseol holds a small blade, his expression calm despite the sudden undead ambush. He looks around, his gamer instincts already mapping out the quickest route to the objective. A weathered tombstone stands nearby, its inscription long since faded. Baek stands firm, waiting for the first skeleton to make a move. He activates his blink spell, his form blurring as he moves at impossible speeds. For a guy with 0 mana capacity, his focus is absolutely lethal. A massive shockwave clears the path as something much bigger emerges. A giant horned skeleton with glowing red eyes let out a silent, bone-chilling roar. Baek faces down the monster, his blade glowing with cold intent. The beast swings, but Baek is already gone, dodging the strike with a casual step. He laughs as he lands a precise counterattack, making the giant stagger. The creature's skull begins to crack under the pressure of the repeated strikes. With the boss down, Baek retrieves the spine staff, a legendary item he knew was hidden here. He glances back, noticing the rest of the class is in serious trouble. A dark barrier has trapped the students, sealing them in with the undead horde. The brown-haired girl gasps for air, her mana running dangerously low. Tyran prepares a powerful spell, but even he looks rattled by the sheer numbers. Ma Yusong stands his ground, his eyes darting between the encroaching skeletons. The group forms a defensive circle, but the skeletons just keep coming. Hong Bion raises her staff, her hands shaking slightly as the barrier tightens. More tattered skeletons emerge from the purple smoke, their jaws clicking in anticipation. A terrified girl with red hair freezes as a skeleton lunges from the shadows. The undead beast snaps its teeth right in her face. A sudden burst of ice magic shatters the skeleton mid-air, saving the girl. Aiselle steps forward, her blue hair whipping in the wind as she takes control. Tyran unleashes a massive fire spell, his magic circles glowing bright red. Somewhere in the darkness, a hooded figure watches the battle through a glowing orb. Aiselle looks up, her intuition telling her they're being watched by a true monster. Tyran gives a confident grin, seemingly more excited than scared by the chaos. Three robed skeletons stand under a giant glowing magic circle as the students realize the true danger of the trap. A student with glasses and a smug grin raises his wand, seemingly more excited than scared by the trial. A skeletal hand is blasted into pieces by a sudden surge of magical energy. The student with glasses charges forward, his wand glowing with a sharp blue light. Tyran smashes a skeleton skull with a heavy physical strike, clearing a path for the group. He shouts in excitement as he unleashes a blast of lightning, seemingly enjoying the high-stakes test. Baek Yuseol watches the chaos with a sweat drop, unimpressed by the flashy but inefficient displays of magic. Aiselle Wolf and Flame look on in shock as more magic circles begin to light up the cemetery. Hong Bion clenches her teeth, her red eyes reflecting the growing army of undead. More skeletons crawl out of the cracked earth, their forms wreathed in a toxic purple haze. Flame takes a moment to catch her breath, already exhausted from the endless waves of enemies. Other students lie scattered on the ground, unable to keep up with the overwhelming pressure. Two more robed skeletons emerge from the mist, their hollow eyes fixed on their next targets. A skeleton lunges at Flame, its jagged claws mere inches away from her face. She grinds her teeth, refusing to back down even as the situation turns dire. Flame barely dodges another skeleton's strike, her movements becoming sluggish. A massive skeletal figure looms in the background, its presence suffocating the area. Baek stands calmly among the undead, his gaze steady as he identifies the leader. A skeletal warrior with glowing red eyes stares directly at him, sensing a different kind of threat. The same skeleton is suddenly enveloped in a surge of dark energy. Baek stands next to the massive undead creature, looking completely at home in the middle of a war zone. With the immediate threat neutralized, the students gather to regroup in the clearing. Aiselle looks at Baek with a mix of surprise and confusion, wondering how he handled things so easily. Tyran crosses his arms, looking skeptical as Baek explains what really happened. Maizen isn't quite convinced, suspecting Baek is hiding more than he lets on. Baek gestures while talking to Flame and Maizen, explaining the pattern behind the skeleton's movement. Hong Bion and Flame listen intently as Baek outlines a plan to find the master of this domain. Despite their initial doubts, the group begins to trust Baek's tactical insight. A shot of the decrepit cemetery chapel, standing as a silent witness to the dark magic being cast. The true mastermind reveals himself, Sa Baehyuk, a 5th-class necromancer from the Mage Tower of Darkness. Sa Baehyuk smirks, a sinister glint in his eye as he watches the students through his scrying orb. A sudden blast of ice magic tears through the cemetery, catching the necromancer completely off guard. Sa Baehyuk looks stunned, sweat dripping down his face as his defensive spells are shattered. A wall of skeletal bones is pulverized by a powerful impact, sending shards flying everywhere. An explosion of light and fire rocks the graveyard as the students fight back in earnest. Hong Bi-yun and her teammate watch the fireworks from a safe distance, regrouping for the next wave. Sa Baehyuk grips his staff, looking furious at the unexpected resistance from mere academy students. 4 silhouettes appear through the thickening mist, led by a calm and determined Baek. The necromancer wipes blood from his mouth, his pride wounded after being hit by a low-class spell. In a desperate move, Sa Baehyuk raises his hands and calls for every skeletal soldier in the area to rally to him. Dozens of skeletons begin to rise once more, their bones rattling in a horrific symphony. A fresh horde of undead warriors marches forward, wreathed in the necromancer's dark, purple aura. Sa Baehyuk is coughing up a large amount of blood, his face pale and eyes wide with shock. He huffs and puffs, wiping the gore from his chin while struggling to maintain his focus. His skeletal minions scream in a terrifying chorus, their hollow eyes glowing with murderous intent. The necromancer stands amidst the gravestones, his dark robes billowing in the supernatural wind. Suddenly, Baek Yuseol appears behind him like a ghost, his silhouette wreathed in golden light. Sa Baehyuk spins around, his expression turning into one of pure, unadulterated horror. Baek Yuseol offers a calm, slightly mocking smile, his golden eyes fixed on his prey. He stands over the wounded mage, his presence overwhelming as he holds the remains of a defeated summon. The necromancer yells in a blind rage, his pride shattered by the commoner's efficiency. Baek Yuseol stands triumphantly, having already dismantled the most dangerous part of the necromancer's trap. The boss skeleton's skull lies crushed on the ground, a testament to Baek's overwhelming strength. A final surge of energy obliterates the remaining undead, clearing the immediate vicinity. Sa Baehyuk is doubled over, vomiting more blood as the mana backlash hits him full force. He gasps for air, his eyes bloodshot and full of hatred for the boy standing before him. Baek Yuseol stands firm, his sword humming with power as he prepares to finish the confrontation. Elsewhere, Tyran swings his blade with reckless abandon, thoroughly enjoying the carnage. Baek Yuseol moves through the clearing with predatory grace, his eyes never leaving the necromancer. Sa Baehyuk huffs again, leaning heavily on his staff just to stay upright. Baek looks over his shoulder, his sharp senses detecting a new movement in the mist. Hong Bi-yeon finds herself surrounded by shadows, her silver hair standing out against the hellish landscape. She pants heavily, her red eyes darting between the monsters closing in on her. A sudden shockwave catches her by surprise, nearly knocking her off her feet. "What?" she cries out, unable to believe the scale of the magic being used nearby. A beam of blinding purple light incinerates a line of skeletons, carving a path through the graveyard. Baek Yuseol is suddenly trapped behind a wall of massive skeletal ribs. With a flash of golden light, he uses his blinker skill to phase through the obstacle and counterattack. He looks back with a focused intensity, his mind racing as he calculates his next move. A violent explosion of magical energy rocks the cemetery, sending debris flying in every direction. Baek lands a crushing blow on the necromancer, sending him flying backward. Sa Baehyuk screams in agony, his physical body reaching its breaking point. In a last-ditch effort, he summons a forest of bone spikes to impale his attacker. The ground rumbles as the sinister, smoky bones erupt from the earth. The necromancer yells out one last defiant command, his face wreathed in blood and madness. Sharp, jagged bone spikes continue to erupt, turning the clearing into a death trap. Baek Yuseol is caught in the middle of a massive mana flare, the light blindingly bright. He grits his teeth and pushes forward, a determined smirk playing on his lips despite the danger. Sa Baehyuk laughs maniacally, his eyes wide and bloodshot as he revels in the chaos. A heavy, dark spike is driven deep into the ground with a resounding crunch. Baek is hit by a sudden, powerful strike that draws blood, forcing a pained cry of "Yuga" from his lips. He struggles to catch his breath, sweat and blood dripping down his face as he glares at the mage. The necromancer looms over Baek, who has been forced onto one knee by the weight of the dark magic. Sa Baehyuk gives a chilling grin, his dark staff crackling with a deadly, purple energy. Baek Yuseol huffs heavily, his school uniform tattered and his body reaching its physical limit as he stares up at his opponent. He tightens his grip on his weapon, his knuckles white as he prepares for one last desperate gambit. Sa Baehyuk laughs mockingly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth as he prepares to deliver a finishing blow with his dark spear. Baek's golden eyes never waver, even as sweat pours down his face and his breathing becomes ragged. The necromancer stands tall amidst the fog-shrouded tombstones, a dark silhouette of impending doom looming over the young student. Despite the overwhelming odds, a flicker of something other than fear, perhaps a newfound plan, begins to spark in Baek's eyes. "Oh, I can do that," he thinks to himself, a sudden realization washing away the exhaustion for a brief moment. He remains on his knees, blood soaking through his pants from a deep gash on his leg, while the necromancer's shadow stretches over him like a shroud. Sa Baehyuk gives a maniacal yell, his face contorted in a mix of pain and sadistic glee as he swings his weapon. Baek focuses intensely, the world slowing down around him as he gathers every ounce of remaining mana for a final move. He is thrown backward by a sudden impact, sliding across the damp earth as the necromancer watches with amusement. The villain's laughter rings through the cemetery, his bloodshot eyes wide with the thrill of victory as he watches his prey struggle. "A bit," Baek gasps, his vision blurring as he tries to maintain his focus amidst the swirling shadows. From the necromancer's perspective, the boy is a broken mess, struggling to even crawl away on the cold ground. "Kehaha," Sa Baehyuk cackles, his dark spear wreathed in sinister energy as he prepares to end the fight once and for all. Baek Yuseol hangs his head, his breathing a series of painful rasps as he waits for the right millisecond to execute his plan. So, our story starts in a gloomy graveyard where a kid named Baek Yuseol is facing down a dangerous dark mage. You see, Baek isn't just some random student, he's actually a pro gamer who got transmigrated into the body of the weakest character in his favorite game. But despite having the worst stats, his 10 years of muscle memory are currently making this high-level enemy cough up blood. The mage can't believe a mere student is keeping up. but he doesn't have much time left to process it. Baek closes the distance in a blur, driving his blade straight through the guy's chest. He puts every ounce of focus into the strike, knowing a single mistake means game over in this world. A massive flash of light follows as the killing blow connects, ending the threat for good. Another student nearby looks on, completely frozen at the sight of such raw skill. With the caster gone, his army of summoned skeletons starts crumbling into dust. A few other students watch from the sidelines, struggling to understand what just happened. Baek stands over the fallen body, letting the adrenaline finally subside. He looks pretty drained, but he managed to pull off a miracle with only one spell. Later that night, things finally quiet down around Stella Academy. Headmaster Eltman, a man who's clearly seen his fair share of battles, is waiting to speak with him. The two talk privately, with the headmaster likely wondering how a trash commoner did all that. Baek keeps his cool, making sure not to reveal too much about his meta-knowledge. Eltman gives him one last long look before turning to head back to his office. They part ways, and Baek starts heading back toward the dorms. But he isn't alone for long. He senses someone else nearby. It's Aiselle Wolf, the fallen noble, who is also caught up in the graveyard mess. He decides to approach her, even though she looks like she's carrying the world on her shoulders. Aiselle looks away, probably feeling the weight of her family's ruin even more after tonight. Baek watches her, remembering her tragic storyline from the game. She clenches her hand over her chest, clearly overwhelmed by everything. She looks up at him, still trying to process the fact that he saved her. In this moment, Baek isn't just playing a game. He's decided he's going to change her fate. He tells her something encouraging, using a bit of that hero energy. Aiselle is stunned, her eyes widening as his words sink in. She never expected such genuine support from someone she barely knew. His kindness hits her hard, and she can't help but blush like crazy. Inside, Baek is cringing, wondering why he just said something so cheesy. He gets flustered himself and practically runs away before he says anything else embarrassing. He leaves poor Aiselle standing there, her mind probably racing. She clasps her hands together, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time in a long time. She stands tall, her resolve newly hardened. The next morning, the students gather in the main hall for the semester's assembly. Hong Bi-yun, the resident fire magic prodigy, takes a moment to look back at the mysterious commoner. She shoots him a confident smile, clearly thinking she's the one to beat. The headmaster steps up to the podium, looking over the crowd of young mages. A student in a blue cap, known as Flame, starts walking toward the front. She stands beside Eltman, looking out at the students with a knowing look. She gives a small, cryptic smile, making it clear that Baek isn't the only one with secrets in this academy. In a fleeting vision of his past life as a pro gamer, Baek sees the Decimator, the legend he once played the strongest mage warrior in the world. Back in reality, the silver-haired girl in the blue cap, another possessor known as Flame, suddenly taps him on the shoulder. Baek is instantly on guard, knowing she might be the only one in the academy who can see through his trash character act. He watches her walk away, wondering exactly what she knows about his secret mission. Flame just gives him a cryptic look, leaving him with more questions than answers. As the award ceremony finally wraps up, Baek heads back toward the dorms, his mind racing. Once he's alone in his room, he pulls out his reward for the Necromancer fight, a glowing purple orb known as a pose vessel. This rare item is exactly what he needs to overcome his syndrome and start using more than just the blink spell. He smirks, realizing that even with the worst stats, a pro can always find a way to break the game. A system window pops up, confirming that he's officially on the path toward the real, true ending. Baek stars at it, remembering the destruction that happened the last time he cleared this game in the real world. He recalls the blood and chaos of the final boss fight, a memory that still hits him like a truck. In his previous world, he was a legend who conquered impossible odds. Now, he's starting from scratch, but he has the meta-knowledge to ensure this timeline doesn't end in ruin. He clenches his fist, determined to save this world instead of just watching it burn. The next morning, he gets ready and heads out for another day at Stella Academy. The campus is buzzing as students from noble families gather for their morning lecture. Inside a nearby chapel, a group of students is gathered for a quiet morning prayer. Aiselle Wolf is among them, her head bowed as she quietly prays for her fallen family. She looks exhausted, clearly drained by the stress of her family's recent scandal. Suddenly, a glowing magical butterfly flutters right in front of her, catching her eye. It floats up toward a massive blue crystal hanging from the ceiling, radiating a soft light. Aiselle watches it, finding a brief moment of peace away from her dark thoughts. The other students continue their prayers, oblivious to the small magical moment. Later on, Aiselle sits on a quiet bench, having a humble meal of plain bread. Being a fallen noble means she has to survive on the bare minimum, even in this elite school. Her lunch is interrupted when an arrogant noble student with glasses walks up to her. He looks down on her with pure disdain, clearly finding her presence tasteless. Aiselle clutches her lunch and looks away, trying to avoid a confrontation. But the guy won't let it go, leaning in to continue his verbal bullying. He smirks and asks if she even knows who he is, as if his noble title should make her tremble. He reaches out to grab her, but he's stopped by a sudden, loud slap. A brown-haired classmate jumps in, smacking his hand away before he can touch her. Aiselle looks up in complete shock, stunned by the sudden intervention. The noble guy is frozen, staring in disbelief at the girl who dared to stand up to him. The brown-haired girl doesn't flinch, shouting at him to get lost and leave her friend alone. He grumbles about her lack of manners, but he quickly backs off to avoid more attention. The girl grabs Aiselle's hand and they start power walking away from the scene. Suddenly, a stern voice stops them in their tracks, telling them to follow him immediately. The brown-haired girl sighs, realizing they might be in trouble for the scene they just caused. Aiselle is still shaking a little, her heart racing from the close call. The girl just looks at her, trying to keep her cool despite the looming trouble. Aiselle is left blinking in complete confusion as her friend pulls her away, still trying to wrap her head around that strange encounter on the bench. The brown-haired girl keeps walking, her pace brisk as she leads Aiselle through the academy's massive stone corridors. She glances back over her shoulder, making sure they aren't being followed by the arrogant noble who was just bothering them. Somewhere else in the school, a blonde student in a crimson shirt sits at an ornate desk, sipping tea with practiced noble elegance. He has a smug, knowing smile on his face, looking like a grandmaster who's just made a winning move in a game of chess. Outside, the moon hangs high over the towering spires of Stella Academy, the prestigious center of the magical world. In a quiet lecture hall, a professor in a dark trench coat gestures toward a holographic map, explaining the tactical importance of the surrounding terrain. Aiselle sits among her fellow students, her expression melancholic as she stares off into space, her mind clearly elsewhere. Baek Yuseol is there too, his sharp eyes hidden behind his glasses as he quietly observes the power dynamics shifting in the room. He watches as the other students whisper and gossip, mostly ignoring the fallen noblewoman sitting by herself. In stark contrast, Hong Bi-yeon is surrounded by admirers, her silver hair and regal aura making her the undisputed star of the class. The social chasm between the two girls is vast, built on centuries of political rivalry and ancient family history. Aiselle looks away, her mind drifting to the legends of her own ancestors and the weight of their legacy. She remembers the tales of the Grand Duchy of Mulf, whose powerful ice magic once ruled over vast frozen territories. And then there are their eternal rivals, the royal household of Adelebit, who climbed to the top through the absolute power of fire magic. These two houses have been at each other's throats for generations, a conflict that still echoes through the halls of Stella. As the lecture ends, Aiselle stands alone, feeling the heavy burden of her family's decline from their former glory. Baek watches her for a moment before deciding to make his move, a small, calculating smirk playing on his lips. He walks right up to her with a casual wave and shocks her with a direct proposal. "Let's be a team." Hong Bi-yeon catches the interaction from across the hall, her eyebrows shooting up in genuine surprise at the unlikely pairing. She looks deeply skeptical, wondering why the Academy's newest star would want anything to do with a commoner like Aiselle. Aiselle is frozen in place, her eyes wide as she tries to figure out if Baek is actually serious about his offer. Baek just gives her a bright, cheerful grin, looking like he hasn't a single worry in the world. She lets out a shaky breath, finally finding her voice as she weighs the possibilities of this strange alliance. Baek laughs, his confidence infectious as he signals for her to follow him to their next destination. As they walk away together, the rest of the students can't help but stare, whispering about the bizarre choice Baek has made. Hong Bi-yeon stands with her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed as she watches them leave, her mind working through a dozen theories. She finds Baek's actions erratic and completely illogical, which only makes her more frustrated. With a sharp huff, she turns her head, trying to convince herself that she doesn't care about their little partnership. But her red eyes still burn with intensity, betraying the calculating thoughts she's hiding behind her noble mask. In this place, she knows that every alliance is either a potential weapon or a threat to her own standing. Suddenly, a tall, handsome student leans against a window in the sunlit hallway, watching the scene unfold with amusement. It's Ma Yuseong, the legendary magic warrior whose talent is whispered to be on an entirely different level from the rest. He gives Bi-yeon a charming, slightly smug smile, clearly enjoying her visible irritation at Baek's antics. His dark eyes are sharp and incredibly perceptive, as if he can already see the ending of the story they're all just starting. Bi-yeon looks at him with a mix of begrudging respect and annoyance, not wanting to hear any of his cryptic advice. In the background, Baek and Aiselle keep talking, completely unaware of the heavy hitters watching their every move. For a split second, Bi-yeon's cold expression softens, a flash of genuine uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She quickly covers it up with her usual pride, though Ma Yuseong's presence alone makes it hard to maintain her composure. She forces a tight smile, determined to remain the pinnacle of noble grace, no matter what the others do. A close-up of her crimson eye shows a mind that is constantly calculating, refusing to let any advantage slip away. Meanwhile, Baek leads Aiselle toward a quiet corner, ready to start the first phase of the plan that will change both of their lives. Hong Bi-yeon casts one last look over her shoulder, her crimson eyes filled with unspoken questions as Baek and Aiselle walk away, while Ma Yuseong watches the scene with a cryptic, knowing expression. The afternoon sun glints off the grand spires and majestic domes of the academy, a silent witness to the changing tides of fate beginning to stir within its walls. But for Baek Yuseol, these peaceful school days are merely a prelude to the shadowy monsters and deadly challenges that he knows are waiting for him in the darkness ahead. A massive purple monster looms over the academy's training grounds. The instructor keeps a watchful eye on his clipboard, grading every trainee's performance. Chaos erupts across the arena as students struggle against summoned beasts. Aiselle Wolf, a fragile-looking student, tries to steady her breathing. She's clearly feeling the pressure, her hands trembling as she prepares for her turn. Defeating a mid-level monster usually takes a full team of 5 elite mages. Her teammates are already waiting for her at the staging area. Our protagonist, Baek Yuseol, casually laughs it off, claiming he just got held up in the restroom. Suddenly, a massive shockwave rocks the stadium, signaling the next wave of monster. He heads off with the rest of the class, leaving Aiselle alone for a moment. But then, Baek stops and glances back at her. She looks up, completely caught off guard by his sudden attention. He reaches out and gently fixes a loose ribbon in her hair. She mumbles a shy thank you as he walks away. She thinks back to an encouraging word from a friend and finds her resolve. Gripping her staff tight, Aiselle steps into the arena. A giant, red-eyed boar bursts through the dust cloud, charging straight for her. She realizes this beast has the exact opposite elemental attribute to her magic. The ground thunders as the massive boar closes the distance. Its tusks are sharp, and its gaze is fixed on the girl. She activates her spell, petals swirling around her in a burst of light. Magical threads lash out, snagging the boar's legs. Thorns and vines erupt from the floor, pinning the monster down. But it's not enough. The boar lets out a roar and tears right through her restraints. It lunges forward with terrifying speed. Aiselle doesn't flinch, staring down the beast as it closes in. The boar unleashes a devastating beam of mana from its mouth. She barely evades the blast, standing firm amidst the smoke. She quickly maneuvers behind the monster while it recovers. After an exhausting struggle, Aiselle finally walks away from the defeated beast. Next up are Hong Bion and Ma Yusong, the Academy's star pupils. A new, far more dangerous threat emerges from the shadows. A massive, fish-like humanoid towers over the two prodigies. Their combined fire and lightning attributes give them a perfect matchup. The monster lets out a menacing hiss, its yellow eyes locked on its prey. Its rippling muscles suggest overwhelming physical power. The beast roars as a surge of blue energy erupts from its body. Hong Bion and Ma Yusong step forward together to meet the challenge. Hong Bion leads the assault, her spear glowing with intense heat. Ma Yusong uses magic circles to launch himself into the air for a high-angle strike. Baek and another student watch from the sidelines, knowing the monster has no chance. He closes the gap in an instant, facing the monster head-on in midair. Ma Yusong smirks as his weapon glows with a sharp green energy. With one swift motion, he shatters a massive block of stone into pieces. He sticks the landing as the ground erupts in a burst of debris. The flying monster roars, while Ma Yusong skillfully dodges its desperate swipe. Hong Bion readies her staff, her crimson eyes locked onto the target. Ma Yusong remains in the air, effortlessly dancing around the creature's attacks. A focused blast of magical energy slams directly into the monster. The creature is driven into the floor with a massive, earth-shaking impact. It's left heavily damaged and struggling to recover from the blow. Ma Yusong doesn't give it a chance, preparing his final strike. The monster roars one last time from behind the shattered rock. It lets out a final screech as its health bar drops to 0. The beast's glowing yellow eye and rows of sharp teeth begin to fade. A flurry of strikes finishes the job, sending shockwaves through the arena. Ma Yusong walks away from the smoke, not a single hair out of place. Hong Bion lowers her staff, her regal presence commanding the training ground. Elsewhere, a fast-moving silhouette signals the start of another skirmish. Baek Yuseol and Hong Bion regroup as the first stage of the exam ends. A sudden explosion clears the field for the next trial. A giant, shadowy silhouette emerges, crackling with blue lightning. Baek and Hong Bion walk together, discussing their performance so far. She looks back at the empty arena, seemingly expecting more of a challenge. Later, Baek finds himself standing in a grand hall with Aiselle Wolf. He notices her nervous expression and tries to offer some quiet reassurance. An ominous figure begins the next phase of the mock monster battle. A system message confirms the summoning as multiple beasts appear. A giant frog-like creature with glowing eyes enters the arena circle. A massive bull monster huffs, ready to charge at the two students. A bird-like beast and a liquid-based spirit join the fray. Finally, a large bat with purple eyes descends from the shadows. Baek talks with Hong Bion, who still seems skeptical of his abilities. Ma Yusong watches the scene from a distance with a subtle smirk. Baek and Aiselle are suddenly surrounded by all 5 summoned monsters. The beasts form a tight circle, cutting off any easy path to escape. He just smiles, seemingly enjoying the high-pressure situation. Baek turns to his companion, looking oddly cheerful for someone in danger. The massive bull and frog tower over the pair, their presence suffocating. Baek leans in and tells Aiselle to just trust his lead. The scene shifts to a dark forest as the next part of the exam begins. Aiselle looks at him, her eyes full of doubt and growing concern. Close up on Baek as he notices something shifting in the darkness. They stand together in the silence of the woods, waiting for the first move. Baek Yuseol and Aiselle Wolf stand together in the middle of a mock battle, surrounded by artificial terrain. Baek gives a confident smirk, knowing exactly how this complicated fight will go. A close-up of Aiselle's hand as she grips her staff tightly, preparing her first move. Aiselle closes her eyes, focusing her mana to unleash a large-scale spell. She begins to float as a whirlwind of cold, magical energy surrounds her. Other students watch from the shadows as the Lady of Winter prepares her magic. Aiselle's brilliant blue aura flares, illuminating the entire battlefield with frosty light. Baek readies his small dagger, waiting for the perfect opening among the monsters. He leaps into action, striking at the massive frog monster's weak points with precision. With blinding speed, Baek delivers a flurry of slashes to the beast's underbelly. The frog monster lashes out with its tongue, but Baek is already several steps ahead. It roars in frustration as Baek continues to dance around its massive, clumsy body. The bird-like monster, the kiter, watches the chaos unfold from above. Nearby, the bull monster's eyes glow with a primal, aggressive red light. The bull lets out a heavy huff before charging forward at full speed. Smoke and dust billow across the arena floor as the heavy hitters move into position. The Nami slime quivers, sensing a sudden shift in the battlefield's energy. The black bat spreads its wings, its purple aura crackling with dark power. In a surprising turn, the monsters begin to collide and attack each other instead of the students. Baek watches the infighting with a satisfied expression, his strategy working perfectly. He uses the distraction to land another series of strikes on the reeling frog monster. The creature's health continues to drop as it fails to land a single hit on the boy. The bull monster slams into the frog, further thinning the ranks of the summoners. Baek's plan moves to its next stage as he targets the elusive Nami slime. The water-based creature looks around in confusion as its surroundings change. A splash of energy hits the slime, disrupting its liquid form and making it vulnerable. Baek stands amidst the spray, his dagger still glowing with concentrated mana. He turns his attention to the kiter, the massive bird looming over him. The kiter lets out a piercing screech, opening its beak wide to strike. The force of the battle drives the massive bird down into the water-covered floor. Above them, the black bat prepares a vicious dive bomb attack. The bat's energy clashes with the bird's feathers in a brilliant shower of sparks. The kiter struggles to maintain its balance as the aerial battle intensifies. The Nami slime is caught in the crossfire of the various monster attacks. The black bat's eyes glow even brighter as it senses a weak point in its opponent. The bat and the bird continue their vicious fight, ignoring the humans nearby. Aiselle stands in a glowing pool of blue mana, the calm center of the magical storm. Baek guards her flank, his eyes darting between the remaining monster threats. He activates his signature magic, his gold eyes focused on the final target. Aiselle stands regally, her staff acting as a beacon amidst the chaotic mana. In a flash of light, Baek uses Blink to close the distance instantly. He moves faster than the monsters can react, aiming for a decisive finishing blow. Baek Yuseol and Aiselle Wolf stand their ground as the arena is engulfed in swirling mana. A violent explosion of magical energy erupts at the center of the battlefield. Baek remains steadfast in front of Aiselle, shielding her as she finalizes her grand spell. From the spectator stands, Ma Yusong and Hong Bian watch the display in utter disbelief. In a blur of motion, Baek weaves through the chaos, his dagger flashing as he strikes through the shadows. Aiselle stands poised in the darkness, her staff glowing like a beacon of hope amidst the storm. She ascends into the air, centered within a complex, multi-layered magic formation. Close up on Aiselle's eyes, now shimmering with the cold, intense fire of her frost mana. With a determined look, Aiselle readies herself to unleash the full extent of her power. A titanic flower of crystalline ice begins to bloom above the arena, casting a chilling shadow. One of the watching students gasps in awe, completely captivated by the magnificent sight. The frost flower looms over the remaining monsters, its aura freezing the very air. The intricate petals of the ice crystal expand, radiating waves of sub-zero energy. Aiselle's expression is firm as she maintains absolute control over the massive mana discharge. A blinding shockwave of blue energy ripples outward, silencing the battlefield. One by one, the ferocious monsters are caught in the blast and encased in ice. The entire arena is transformed into a winter wasteland of towering, jagged frost spires. The creatures' fierce forms are frozen in mid-motion, their threats neutralized. The aggressive red glow in the monster's eyes finally fades behind layers of permafrost. The massive shadow of the black bat hangs over the arena like a tombstone of ice. The academy instructors observe the scene with serious, contemplative expressions. As the frost settles, Aiselle reaches her hand toward the sky in a final gesture. Suddenly, a warm, golden radiance begins to emanate from her palm, defying the cold. Her eyes reflect the mysterious golden light, a secret power that hints at a destiny far greater than anyone imagined.